Security Dimensions of the EU-Armenia Strategic Agenda. Article by Nerses Kopalyan, published on December 8, 2025 on EVN Report. Armenia's nascent security architecture underwent immense transformations after the August 8 Washington Accords, as Armenia and Azerbaijan, under America's auspices, proceeded with an overarching set of agreements designed to jumpstart a normalization process that will, at some presumable point, lead to a peace treaty. Overnight, security thinking in Armenia went from developing a comprehensive security doctrine that anticipated imminent and continuous internecine attacks from Azerbaijan to a security environment where the probability of the use of force had exponentially diminished. This specific configuration served as the cornerstone of a new security architecture, one where the comprehensive security doctrine, intrinsically necessary to democratic small states, will continue to be developed. Yet, its development will be defined by a completely new security environment. Commensurate with these developments has been the broader post-2022 foreign policy shift toward diversification, which envisions Armenia's alignment and integration into the transatlantic system. Contextually, while the United States has been instrumental in providing Armenia the impetus of restructuring its security architecture, it represents only one pillar of that system, while Europe, and institutionally the European Union, formulates the other side. As such, the European configuration of the transatlantic structure for Armenia's developing security doctrine remains just as acute, especially noting Armenia's aspirations of eventually joining the EU. Qualified within the nexus of such vital intervening factors, the signing of a strategic agenda between Yerevan and Brussels on December 2nd, and the large set of security and defense components, integrates Europe as the second important component of Armenia's new security architecture. This article assesses the security dimensions of the EU-Armenia strategic agenda and the extent to which this enhances and gives Armenia the support to improve and strengthen its relatively vulnerable security environment. The full text of the strategic agenda, released by Armenia's foreign ministry the following day, outlines 6 primary areas of cooperation, including foreign and security policy. It calls for deeper political dialogue and collaboration with the EU's common security and defense policy to address regional security, institutional reform, crisis management, counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and hybrid threats. Considering Armenia's capacity limitations in several of these fields, particularly defense sector reform, crisis management, and cybersecurity, the security component of the agenda provides an important space that offers Armenia an expansive toolkit. By utilizing Europe's developed capabilities, many of which have been shaped by the expertise of NATO member states, Armenia gains access to a toolkit that significantly expands its potential for institutional and operational capacity building. At the structural level, the agenda establishes regular security and defense consultations between Armenia and the EU, with the objective of evolving the initial foundational consultation framework into a more structured cooperation. It highlights the role of the EU mission in Armenia, EUME, as the core of Europe's soft security presence in the country, and ensures that the mission continues operations at full capacity for as long as necessary. This explicit commitment signals not only support for Armenia's developing security architecture, but also Europe's, and by extension, the transatlantic system's long-term investment in Armenia's security and stability. The reassurance is significant for Yerevan, especially given earlier concerns that EUME's future could be subjected to politicization by Russia and Azerbaijan. The strategic agenda effectively resolves those uncertainties. The Washington Accords have limited, even neutralized, Baku's vigorous opposition to the mission, since in the domain of normalization, Aliyev must balance his newfound relationship with the U.S., the Trump administration's uncompromising demand for normalization and peace, and the fact that the EUME directly contributes to the stability Washington seeks. In this context, EUME bolsters Armenia's security while reinforcing the EU's role as an important factor in Armenia's security architecture and supporting the normalization process shaped by the Washington Accords. At the institutional level, the agenda stipulates continued and expanded support for Armenia under the European Peace Facility, EPF. Access to EPF funds is strategically vital for strengthening Armenia's capabilities in cybersecurity and combating hybrid threats. But just as importantly, The specification of EPF in the agenda also signals a political resolution of sorts. The EPF was established in 2021 as an off-budget funding mechanism for EU actions with military and defense implications. It has been used by the EU to provide substantial assistance to Ukraine, but also a number of countries in Africa and the Middle East, and EU-aligned countries in its neighborhood such as Moldova, Georgia, Bosnia, and North Macedonia. Non-lethal support to Armenia via the EPF was first announced in November 2023, with a €10 million package approved in July 2024, after initially being blocked by Hungary, followed by a second €20 million package, reportedly blocked again by Budapest in April 2025. Including the EPF in the broader agenda reduces its vulnerability to political obstruction, transforming it from an ad hoc endeavor into a stable, institutionalized component of EU-Armenia cooperation. At the operational level, the agenda outlines deeper cooperation in countering hybrid threats faced by Armenia, including combating foreign information manipulation and interference (FIMI) through capacity building. Considering the continuous and amplified hybrid and misinformation operations targeting Armenia since 2021, and the expectation of intensified waves of attacks ahead of the 2026 parliamentary elections, the EU's support for enhancing Armenia's capabilities in combating hybrid threats and foreign interference campaigns is going to be of fundamental importance. Instructive here is the scope and depth of similar support, if not more, that the EU provided Moldova for its recent elections, and the relative level of success that Moldova had in combating the wide-ranging hybrid and interference operations it was subjected to. Considering the contextual similarities with Armenia and the increasing attacks it already faces, which will be further amplified in the 2026 elections, the EU's technical, strategic, and institutional support is going to be vital. Intrinsic to this endeavor is the specification in the agenda that the EU will support Armenia in developing a comprehensive framework of potentially establishing institutions to precisely combat hybrid threats. An important and additional part of the operational support that the agenda will offer. Armenia will be the EU's broader endeavor of enhancing Armenia's cyber resilience through technical assistance, information sharing, best practices, and policy expertise. Of extreme importance for the untrained observer in this section of the agenda is the specification of technical assistance and information sharing. Considering the severe limitations that Armenia, as a small state that is rebuilding its security architecture, faces is its access to information and external intelligence. EU's commitment to sharing information that will be vital to Armenia's cyber resilience is an extremely important development that can exponentially enhance and strengthen Armenia's ability of combating both cyber threats as well as wide-ranging hybrid attacks. Noting the fact that access to information remains the most fundamental part of preempting and combating interference and subversion campaigns, and given the fact that the EU is able to accrue immense and vital information within this domain, the sharing of such information with Armenia is going to be an extraordinarily important development. It provides Armenia with insights and data it would otherwise have absolutely no access to. Finally, at the educational level, which itself is an extension of the broader capacity-building framework, the agenda establishes sectoral expert exchanges and cooperation with the European Security and Defense College, ESDC, and other EU institutions. The ESDC is an autonomous EU body that provides training and education for civilian, diplomatic, police, and military personnel to adapt to and address existing and emerging security challenges effectively. The college operates as a network, bringing together civilian and military institutes, universities, academies, and other organizations working in the fields of security and defense. It offers programs for leadership development, crisis management, cybersecurity, hybrid threats, and beyond. For Armenia, this offers an immense opportunity and resource for developing both its military academies, partnering its defense educational institutions with Europe, and offering advanced training, military science, and cutting-edge research on security thinking and policy development. Considering Armenia's chronic underdevelopment within all of these spheres, this part of the strategic agenda is going to provide Armenia immense dividends. In more specific terms, one of the biggest limitations to Armenia's capacity to develop and implement institutional reforms within the security sector has not only been institutional underdevelopment, but rather knowledge and expertise. Institutional depth due to the absence of strong institutions and institutional memory, has been the underlying problem of why Armenia has struggled to develop, strengthen, and enhance its security capabilities. It simply does not have the education system, the sufficient know-how and trained experts to do so. Thus, even with sufficient funding and political will, institutional reforms remain stagnant without the most important component, know-how. With this important component that is included in the strategic agenda, Armenia will now have access to advanced and cutting-edge training within the security and defense domains. In its totality, the security component of the strategic agenda incorporates Europe as an important part of Armenia's developing security architecture, where the confluence of hard power capacity and small state resilience become integrated at the institutional level, with European and transatlantic standards. As Armenia has developed and transitioned its security thinking from the failed Russo-Soviet model to a modern small-state comprehensive security iteration, the support, expertise, and transfer of knowledge from its Western partners have become unequivocally crucial. The strategic agenda gives Armenia the toolkit to precisely achieve the transitional objectives that it is seeking within the domain of comprehensive security. Thus, while the European Union cannot offer hard power capacity, it is, with this agreement, offering all other power capacities that Armenia institutionally needs. Understood within this framework, Armenia's bilateral relations with the United States, India, France, and numerous other partners are designed to support the hard power component, while the EU-Armenia strategic agenda takes long strides in providing Armenia the soft power and resiliency components that are just as important. The extent to which Armenia effectively, and might one add aggressively, utilizes and operationalizes this opportunity will determine the speed, depth, scope, and efficacy of its post-2022 security architecture.